T.S. Eliot wrote a play entitled Murder in the Cathedral. And it's a play written in poetic form, iambic pentameter. Don't ask me what that is, I just know it's a kind of a complex poetic style. And in it addresses a true story. The story is about Thomas à Becket, St. Thomas à Becket. And Thomas à Becket was a subject of one of the kings of England. I don't know, King George, King Henry III, IV, II, I don't remember. But he was the best friend of the king. As my recollection is, he wasn't baptized, he wasn't a Christian, but this man was a man of his word. He was a man of values. And he loved the king as his God. And he said that he would do anything for him. He'd kill for him, die for him, anything. So, the second in command, again, as I recall, was the Archbishop of Canterbury, I believe. And when the king, for whatever reason, wasn't available to do some of the powers he had to do, the Archbishop would take over. And they were bitter enemies. Power does that to people. They fought over the power. So, the Archbishop of Canterbury got very ill. And King whoever says to Thomas à Becket, listen, I want you to become Archbishop of Canterbury, because then I will have my closest friend in power with me, and we will share power and we'll be quite a team. So Thomas à Becket, being the man of principle, said, oh, King, I'm not even a Christian. How can I be an Archbishop? No problem, I'll write to Pope. And in those days, I believe it's still the same, you can't go from a lay state to a bishop. You have to go through becoming a deacon first, at least for 24 hours, a priest, at least for 24 hours, and then a bishop. That's just technical. So he got baptized, I assume for 24 hours, then became a deacon, a priest, and bishop, and then was appointed Archbishop of Canterbury. But before that happened, he said to him, don't do this to me. And the king said, why not? He says, listen, to be an archbishop, don't you have to believe in God and then follow him and give all your allegiance to him just as I do to you as king? He would now become my king. He said, oh, Thomas, please. You love me deeply. You're my best friend. Of course you'll do what I ask. He says, no, if that's what it means to be archbishop, then that's what I'll have to do. And he didn't believe him. So he got baptized, became a deacon, a priest, and a bishop, became Archbishop of Canterbury, and what happened? They became bitter enemies. Because he stood up to the king and refused to follow him just because he was king, he now believed that he had to follow the Lord. It became, this is historical, it became evident to him that he was going to be killed. And so he left and went to France in self-exile. And while he was there in exile in France, he came to the conclusion, Thomas, what are you doing? I'm the Archbishop. I have to go back to my people. I can't be serving them from here in France. And it probably means my life, but that's what it means. But this is where the art form became alive. T.S. Eliot took this historical reality, and the way he got at how Thomas comes back, he had three visitors come to him, just like the three temptations of Jesus in the desert. You know, power, glory, wealth, whatever. And reading the story, the play, you recognize the three temptations. I think they may even be compared to the temptations of Jesus in the desert. But then T.S. Eliot throws in a fourth visitor. And this fourth visitor comes to him and says this. He says, Thomas, you know you have to go back to England, of course. And you know that you will be killed. Yeah, of course. He said, but look at this. You will be killed. You will be buried and become a holy saint and martyr of the church. And hundreds of years from now, when people don't remember the name of this king, like Charles Perry, don't know his name, don't know if he's George or Henry or whatever, the first, second, or fifth, after they forget who the king was, they'll never forget you. You will be St. Thomas à Becket. And he is. So then the narrator in the play says this about this visitor. He says, the last temptation is the greatest treason, to do the right thing for the wrong reason. Chew on that one again. This is terrific stuff. The last temptation is the greatest treason, to do the right thing for the wrong reason. We often think that if we just do right things, we're good. But the reason for doing the right thing is as important as the right thing itself. In fact, for our own salvation, I don't mean heaven and hell salvation, just for our own salvation, saving ourselves as people, we need to have the right reason. This is addressed today in this gospel. Jesus is making a point. He tells a typical little story. He says a man had 2 sons, and he tells the oldest son, and in obedience, he expected obedience from him, go out in the field and work. And he said, no, I won't do it. But he thought about it. He felt bad, felt guilty, so he went out and did it. Then the second son, he said, go out in the field and work. Yes, I'll do it, sir. But he didn't do it. So he asked the question, and this is a really short and quick one. He says, who did the Father's will? And everybody agreed, the first son, the one who said no, but had a change of heart. So then he turns on them to make the point. Very simple. He said, look at it. John the Baptist came, a righteous man, preaching about conversion of heart, change of life. Prostitutes and tax collectors heard him and believed him and changed their lives. You didn't believe John the Baptist. You ridiculed him, and even after you saw people change their lives because of him, you still didn't believe in him. So he said, prostitutes and tax collectors are getting to heaven before you. Now maybe that doesn't sound so astounding, but I have to make a comparison. That would be like if the church here was filled with parishioners. Remember Monsignor Sorley's funeral, all those priests and bishops. So they're sitting over on this side, and Jesus is preaching, and he says, tax collectors and sinners are going to get to heaven before you, bishops and priests. Remember that. Then you'd be astounded. I heard that. I know I didn't hear it. I saw it with my own eyes. I was in France on a trip with priests years ago, and it was the cathedral of Notre Dame. And the artwork in the old cathedrals, thousands of years old, are tremendous. They have beautiful windows and statues like us, but in those days they were teaching tools because most of the people were illiterate. 97% of the people probably. So it was through the arts that they taught the people the Bible. That's why the windows were filled with Bible stories, because the people would have that visual to remember. And over the door, I think the main door of the 3 doors of the cathedral, there's this archway, and I think it's called the door of judgment. Because in it, on this side is a depiction of hell with the flames and all, and this side heaven. And on this side there are ordinary people, priests, bishops, and popes. And on this side there are ordinary people, priests, bishops, and popes. What that did to people was to lift their spirits so high. They said, we already know that we can go to hell, and we want to go to heaven. But how good to know that there's bishops and popes in hell too. How good. In other words, just because you're a priest, bishop, or pope doesn't mean you go to heaven. Because the message really is about change of heart and change of life. Now, another perfect example, kind of a proof of what Jesus is speaking about, is another story he gave about 2 sons. We know it, the famous story of the prodigal son. The prodigal son, the bad boy, says, Daddy, give me all the wealth you've saved up for me. Give me my inheritance. I want it now. So he gets it. He takes it out, spends everything. He ends up broke. He's serving on a farm feeding pigs. He's starving. So he decides to go back to his daddy because he's living, well, he isn't living. And he creates a speech. Dad, I've sinned against God, against you. I'm not worthy to be your son. Just let me be a servant. He goes back. When he gets there, his father runs out. He sees him way far off, and he runs to him. The kid starts the speech. He only gets 2/3 of it out of his mouth. And his father is wrapping his arms around him, kissing him. Get the robes, get the rings, kill the fatted calf. We're going to have a big party. My son was dead. He's come back to life. He was lost. He's found. Wow! So, that takes care of that's the good son. And I say this sincerely, good. He worked every day for his father. He never asked for anything. He did what he was told. He was obedient. He hears the music in the house and says to one of the servants, "What's going on in there?" He says, "Oh, did you know? Your brother came back. Your father's throwing a big party. Killed the fat calf for him." His brother went crazy. Crazy. He wouldn't go in. So this good daddy, once again, goes out to the other son. "Son, what's the matter? Come on in." "No. How dare you? I've worked for you every day. I've been obedient. I've never broken a rule. I've done what you've asked. I've gone beyond the call of duty. You've never killed a fatted calf for me. But this creepy brother of mine who's done all this awful stuff, blown all your money, he comes back after that and you throw a party?" There's the sin. And the father says, "Look, son, your brother was dead. He's come back to life. Your brother was lost. He's found. We must rejoice." And you know the sad part of the story? It doesn't finish. It's left up to our imagination. But I'd lay $1,000 down right now, the brother didn't go in. And if he did, by any chance, just out of obedience, he'd be in the corner like this the whole night. Because even though he did right things, good things, his heart was noble. With all the good things that he did, with all the obedience that he showed, with all the right following of all the right rules, his heart was closed. And he couldn't see right in front of him his own blood brother who came back to his senses. He couldn't rejoice with him. So I ask you, what do you want? What do I want for ourselves? Is it just about doing right things? Is it just about going to church, following all the rules? Do we get an extra gold star or a brownie point and say, "I've never missed mass this year, a whole year, I didn't miss, I wasn't even late. I used to be late all the time, but this year I was there on time, 5 minutes early, I stayed 5 minutes after, I went to communion, I went to confession 4 times, I said a rosary every day, I did my novenas." So what? That's good, bravo, applause. But tell me about your heart. Tell me about your heart. What's the condition of your heart? That's Jesus' question. It's always Jesus' question. Because I think he would agree with T.S. Eliot 100%. The last temptation is the greatest treason. To do the right thing for the wrong reason.